I've obtained new documents in regard to the investigation of Mica Miller's death, and these are affidavits from her sister, Sierra Francis, and her brother, Nathan Francis. These documents were filed on May 2nd, and here is what they say. This is from Sierra Francis, and in the documents, Sierra says, I know my sister to have expressed the abuse and violence against her by her husband to others, including family members and members of the church congregation. Mica told me that there were people following her, keeping track of where she went. She thought that Mr. Miller hired people to follow her. Mr. Miller later confirmed this during a sermon I watched. I'm going to show you a video confirming or at least alluding to what she's saying there at the end after we go through all this. Mica confided to me that Mr. Miller was moving assets that were in his name, such as the vehicle, changing the deed to their house, to the church, transferring things to one of his sons also. In February 2024, Mr. Miller removed my sister's personal items from the home they shared while she was admitted to a mental health facility and left them at the apartment of, I'm going to keep her name out of it, but at someone's apartment. My sister was not aware that her personal possessions had been moved from her residence until she was released from the hospital. I'm also going to show you a video of what John Paul Miller says happened, but we'll get to that here in just a second. Prior to her admission to the mental health facility, Mica was gathering and sorting evidence that she had that she would bring to an attorney to file for divorce to support her claims against Mr. Miller and as to his abuse, character, and paramours and associates he paid off or blackmailed. While at the facility, those documents, emails, files, etc. were removed from her phone, personal laptop, vehicle, purse, and never recovered. She goes on to say that Mica was unable to access her iCloud account. I'm going to show you a video on that too. I'm going to show you videos of Pastor John Paul Miller talking about these things from the pulpit. My sister also expressed to me that she was fearful that she would not make it to the divorce and that her life would be taken from her. It is my belief, based on our conversations with my sister, that she told multiple people, including other family members. Mica stated to me on many occasions, listen to this, if I end up with a bullet in my head, it was not me. It was J.P. Mica forwarded a family group text message notifying us that Mr. Miller was served with divorce papers on April 25, 2024. The only thing that I contest in this is I can only confirm that it was spousal support papers. I cannot confirm that it was divorce papers. Now, the affidavit of her brother, Nathan Francis. I was also a member of Solid Rock, where both John Paul and Mica worked for several years until I left the congregation due to the behaviors I observed. Mica confided in me that John Paul moved her belongings out of their marital residence and in with, again, the friend, so that he could keep an eye on her. Following this, Mica then retained an attorney for purposes of filing for divorce from her husband, and she joined a new church. I have received communication in the past from John Paul Miller stating that he had no reason to file for divorce, but wanted a separation and gave reasons as to why. The email I received on April 3rd, 2023 included a forwarded email from Mr. Miller to Mica, dated April 1st, 2023. I can confirm that Mica did go to Kansas, and she told, according to sources there in Kansas that I spoke with, she told them that they were on a trial separation, and they were trying it out. She confided in a lot of those people that I have spoken with. They all speak about the abuse she says she was suffering. And then one day, out of nowhere, Mica sent a text message to all her friends saying, my husband wants to reconcile. I'm leaving today. So, and I've seen those text messages. So I can confirm that Mica did leave for a separation, trial separation. Mica made several police reports over the last few weeks of her tires being slashed and tracking devices being found on her car. In Mr. Miller's email forwarded to me, he apologizes to Mica for the tires and causing a damage to her vehicle. Mr. Miller's email to my sister continued to state that he was angry when Mica confided or put her family before him, and that made him want to hurt her. In his words, when someone hurts me, I try to hurt them back rather than forgive. And instead of me forgiving you, I just attack and try to cause pain. Mica told me on numerous occasions that she feared John Paul and she wanted to escape him. Let's go back to what Sierra said. In one part of this affidavit, Mica told me, Sierra says this, Mica told me that there were people following her, keeping track of where she went. She thought that Mr. Miller hired people to follow her. Mr. Miller later confirmed that during a sermon I watched. Here's the sermon that she's speaking of. And in this clip, Pastor John Paul Miller claims that he's talking about another pastor. But listen.
A friend of mine that's a pastor called me last week. And one day, on a Monday, his wife told him that he was the greatest husband in the world. That she loved her life and she was so appreciative. The very next day, something happened, and she left. And he didn't know where she went. She just left. Left all of her things. Left everything she had, everything she worked for, everything. He didn't know what to think. He had no idea what was going on. So he hired a third-party service to find her and see where she was living and that kind of stuff. And
Sierra goes on to say, in February 2024, Mr. Miller removed my sister's personal items from the home they shared while she was admitted to the mental health facility and left them at the apartment of a friend. This is what Pastor John Paul Miller says about that.
Last year, my wife, they went to Africa, had a wonderful trip, amazing trip, and she came back with the idea to start a school in Africa. And 6 weeks ago, she goes in the hospital, gets out, and just leaves. Just completely leaves me, leaves everything, drains the bank account, and goes. And guess what? While you're talking bad about me out there, I'm building a school in Africa for over 100 kids to be able to be fed.
Sierra also says prior to her admission to the mental health facility, Mica was gathering and sorting evidence that she had obtained and planned to bring to an attorney for filing for divorce. Her support claims that Mr. Miller... and as to his abuse, talking about his abuse and things of that nature. While at that facility, those documents, emails, files, etc., were removed from her phone, personal laptop, vehicle, etc. Listen to this clip.
When my wife went in the hospital, I looked at her phone and I counted over the past 2 years, 18 people who had texted her and said, if you ever want to talk about your husband, you can talk to me and say anything and I'll keep it confidential. Why the heck does somebody want to hear what somebody else says about their spouse? And 2 of those 18 were men.
There you have it. 2 affidavits filed on May 2nd. According to these court documents, Mica Miller was in fear of her life.